Thank you very much, Rachel. Good afternoon, everybody. It's welcome to the meeting of Barrow Borough Council's Planning Committee. My name is Councillor Anne Thompson and I am Chair of the committee. May I first of all remind you of some of the domestic arrangements. It is important that all participants conduct themselves in an appropriate manner. Please put your mobile phone on silent. Participants must ensure their microphones are muted throughout the meeting. If you wish to speak, you must raise your hand. Please do not interrupt other speakers. Members are reminded they should not have alternative communications going. If members lose connection to the meeting, we will adjourn for 10 minutes to try and get them back in. I would like to remind everybody that this meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube. The whole of the meeting will be recorded except where there are confidential or exempt matters. To vote on matters, I will confirm the recommendation, request a mover and seconder. I will then hand over to Democratic Services Officer, who will call a roll call. The first item on the agenda is apologies for absence, so I will hand over to the Democratic Services Officer, Sharon, to do a roll call of members present at the meeting. Thank you. Thanks, Sharon.
Thanks, Chair. Can I just confirm attendance, please? Councillor M.A. Thompson.
Present.
Councillor C. Thompson.
Present.
Councillor Aswad.
Present.
Councillor Burley.
Present.
Councillor D. Edwards.
Present.
Councillor Gorn.
Present.
I've had apologies from Councillor Hall. Councillor Husband.
Present.
Councillor McEwen.
Present.
Councillor McLeavy.
Present.
Councillor Mooney.
Present.
Councillor Knott.
Present.
Councillor Preston.
Present.
And apologies from Councillor Seward. And officers, please. Jason Hipcase, Development Services Manager.
Present.
Charles Wilton, Principal Planning Officer.
Present.
Debbie Storr, Head of Legal and Governance.
Present.
That's everybody. Thanks, Chair.
Right, thanks, Sharon. Right, there's no urgent items. To receive notice from members who may wish to move any matter delegated rather than to be non-delegated. I haven't received any. Admission of public and press, everything's in part 1. Any declarations of interest?
County Council.
No, if you get any during the meeting, well, please just
the normal, thank you.
Yeah, raise your hand. Okay, Bill. Do you agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of January?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Public participation. We have got 2 members of the public speaking today, which we'll get to shortly. Do you agree the delegated approvals in the information booklet?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Right, so we'll go to the planning applications. The first one is Red Lane, field adjacent to allotments, Barrow in Furness. And this is the one where there is people speaking.
Yeah, Chair, do you want me to admit Mr. and Mrs. White?
Can you just wait till I find me? Oh, right, I found it now. Yes, you can do now, please.
It's Mr. and Mrs. White, and they're both on the same connection.
Okay, thank you. Hello, is that Mr. and Mrs. White?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Councillor Thompson, you're on mute.
Bet a lot of people want to do that. You will have received, Mr. and Mrs. White, good afternoon, welcome to the meeting. You have received a copy of the public participation protocol, which explains the process and informs you that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed to YouTube. May I remind you that in regards to addressing the committee, you have 5 minutes to speak to make your representations, and it must be limited to planning considerations. Please give your name and address then make your representation in 5 minutes about the application, as this will be your only time you will be able to speak. The members of committee have an opportunity to ask you any questions that they may have. If they do, please just answer the question, but do not raise additional points. Okay, that's the end of the script. So we move on. Mrs. White, do you want to start your 5 minutes now? Please.
Hi. Right, my first objection is we object to the static caravan because we feel it's excessive for a brew room for a family of 4. And as what happened last year, they held meetings down there with vast numbers of people, and that itself had an effect upon the local amenity of the local area with both noise, disturbance and nuisance. It also has a negative adverse visual impact as well on the local area, which is the Greenbelt land down there. But we just think that the fact this large of a premises as a brew room could encourage them to have more meetings and rallies as such. But as a rescue, we are objecting because the outer fencing has been targeted and vandalised on many occasions by the applicant's family, and the rescue staff have been subjected to harassment and intimidation by this family. And we feel that giving the planning permission for these further amenities down there would encourage more of this behaviour from this family.
Mrs. White, please, will you just stick to planning considerations?
Okay.
That sort of thing is not a planning consideration, I'm afraid. That's a legal and a police matter, not a planning matter, love. Please.
Right.
Thank you.
And well, again, it would be back down to this fact that they had these meetings, etc., on the land, and the noise, and there was issues where the animals were upset, etc. And we just think this could encourage more of these type of meetings on the land, creating traffic problems within the area, and just creating a bigger amount of people coming and going to the area as well.
Is that all you want to say, Mrs. White? Because you haven't had your full 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's all I need to say.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much for your representation. Has any members of the committee got any questions for Mrs. White? Mrs. White, sorry. No, I can't see any hands raised. Can you, Sharon?
No raised hands, Anne, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Right, so we'll move on to Mr. White. Mr. White, are you there, love?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
You've got 5 minutes as well, and please keep yourself to planning reasons.
I will do. But I am speaking firstly on behalf of Mr. Robert Forrest, who is an objector. He actually owns the land that our rescue centre is based on. He has instructed me to inform the committee today that should licensing decide to ignore the points that are raised, and I'm not saying that you are going to, however, I have been asked to specifically say this, so I am doing. He is willing to and prepared to go to court over the matter because of the following legislation. I'll read you it out in advance. The Registration Act 2002, LRA 2002, in such cases, the exact line of the boundary is left undetermined irrespective of what appears to be shown on the title plan. Furthermore, the thickness of the line on the plan itself approximately 0.3 metres on the ground. This is even ignored.
Excuse me, Mr. White. You do realise this is a civil matter. This isn't a planning matter. This is a planning committee. That is not a planning material. Mr. White, don't interrupt me, please. I know I interrupted you, but it was for a specific purpose. This it's not a planning material consideration, I'm afraid, the boundary. It's a civil matter between the people who own the two fields. And I'm sorry, this committee cannot take that into consideration in its deliberations because it is not a material planning matter. So if you want to spend your whole 5 minutes reading that, feel free to do so. That is up to you. But I'm just telling you that we cannot take that into consideration because it's not it's a civil matter, not a planning matter.
Right,
Okay,
can I
continue.
now continue? Thank you. It states in the legislation, because I contacted the office in relation to the boundary issue, that the applicant was going to go 1 metre inside the alleged boundary. Now, the issue that Mr. Forrest has is, and it clearly states in the legislation for boundaries and for planning, it says here, all of this shows the relevance of the land registry title plans will, in the vast majority of cases, be virtually worthless. Now, the applicant has previously admitted under police caution to removing the boundary fencing. Now, on the application, he states, as per the instruction by the planning office, that he is going to come 1 metre into the ground, onto his premises. However, the boundary is actually over or almost 2 metres from where it originally is at the moment. So he would be technically asking for planning permission on land that does not belong to him. Secondly, my personal objection is it goes back to the legislation regarding the caravan. It is a family of 4 people. We feel it is excessive. We feel that it's a blight on the area. And the point I need to stress to the planning committee, which again was confirmed by the barrister who's helping Mr. Forrest, is this was done in the middle of a pandemic. He did it deliberately hoping that nobody would object. It was actually a number of people that own land in the area that referred this to the council, where the council then investigated and found out it was put there illegally. We feel this was done deliberately because this is what this applicant has done down in the area from day one. And we feel to give him the right to keep this caravan there, mobile home, static caravan of 40 foot in length, would not only be an injustice for licensing, but it would be a slap in the face to everybody who goes through the legislation and does it correctly. And my final point, again, it does come down to the boundary issue, and it is an issue which is covered under your legislation with respects, is that you have a duty to make sure that when you give out permission to build on premises, that the people that are making the application are owners of that premises. Otherwise, with the greatest of respect, Chair, I could put a planning permission to build a 40-foot neon sign on your front garden. And according to the way you're wording it to me today, with the greatest respect, that could go before the council committee, and if it gets passed, then you'd have to put up with fighting me through court to stop me from doing it. Now, the point I'm making is quite simple and quite bluntly. This has been done in the middle of a pandemic. It's been done deliberately by the applicant, knowing that there's a pandemic on and knowing that your officers can't attend. There's been a number of issues relating to this individual and his family, which the police are investigating. And the final point is, I'd like to make the chair aware. There's 2 final points. My first point is the police have today contacted me and asked me to make the chair and the committee aware there is 2 current ongoing investigations in relation to the breach of boundary and criminal damage case. They are expecting charges to be brought on at least one of them. They've asked me to make the chair and the committee aware of that today, which I have now done. Secondly,
thank you.
Secondly,
Thank you, Mr. White. You've had your 5 minutes.
Well, I'm sorry, but I got interrupted, so I think it's only 5
No, I actually added that on because when you heard the beat, that was when your 5 minutes was.
Well, can I just make one quick point?
No, I'm sorry, you can't. I want to bring the officers in to reply now.
Fine, go ahead then, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. White, for your representation. Who's doing this one? Jason? Charles?
Thank you, Chair.
I just want you to just answer some of Mr. White's points before I ask members of the committee to actually ask questions. So they're asking questions on things that they know the truth about.
Right. Thank you, Chair. Just a few words on this one. The application site is a field located on Redley Lane, and I think members will be familiar with this road. It's the country lane that leads out from North Scale and serves Walney Airfield. In fact, the lane stops at the airfield entrance, and leaving North Scale, the field is on the left-hand side, and it's in use as a pony paddock. Now, the application is for three things. It's for a stable, which is already on site. It's also for a static caravan, which again is on site. And it's also for a hay barn. And both the hay barn and the stable would be wooden structures. And they're typical size. The stable and the hay barn are both 3.7 metres long. In old money, that's 24 feet. And they're a type of development that has been approved in quite a few instances in similar situations to this. Pony keeping is, after all, very popular on Walney. The static caravan, to be fair, is not as straightforward. Static caravans are usually associated with residential use, and residential use is not generally considered acceptable in the countryside outside of settlements. But there are two main factors why the caravan is felt to be acceptable in this location. And the first of these is that it's not actually proposed for residential use. In fact, the inside of the caravan has been stripped out, and it's described as being for a brew room and somewhere to get changed, somewhere to escape from the inclement weather. The second reason in its favour, and there's a photograph in extra information that illustrates this point, is that it's not isolated in the sense of a caravan in the middle of the field, in the middle of the countryside. The field adjoins an area of allotments, and there are, as shown in the photograph, a lot of allotment buildings. And the caravan would be seen relative to those buildings next door. In fact, the application has been amended where it is now proposed in a more discreet position than shown in the photograph, and would be shown closer to these other buildings. To conclude then, that the application is, the recommendation is for approval for all three items for those reasons. Now, there were some particular points raised in the presentation, and one of the issues was about a boundary dispute. I understand the dispute is quite long-standing, and there was also reference to allegations of damage, criminal damage. And obviously these are very important matters, but they're not matters for the Council's Planning Committee. There are particular procedures to deal with boundary disputes, for example, and they involve surveyors, possibly solicitors. It doesn't involve planners or Borough Council. There was also issues about the ownership of the application site. With any planning application, an applicant has to sign a statement, and the statement is either that they own the land or that they don't own the land, but we've notified the person who does. And these are called certificates. And in this case, the applicant has signed what we call Certificate A, to the effect that they own the land. And we don't need to go any further than that. We have to sign a certificate saying that the applicant owns the land. Having said that, because of the queries, we we did ask for clarity, and the agent provided land ownership details to show that the applicant did own the field. So I'm not commenting on the boundary dispute there. All I'm saying is that the applicant does appear to own the land on the application side. The other point that was raised was that the land could be used for hosting meetings, and yes, I would say that could be the case, because any land can be used for up to 28 days in any calendar year for any purpose. But I don't see the caravan as being particularly relevant to that use. It's a caravan stripped out and is in effect a shed with windows. Based upon that, Chair, and the fact, as I said, that the building seemed relative to other buildings, it's not considered to harm the green wedge, and the recommendation is for approval.
Right, thanks, Charles. Has any members of the committee got any questions for Mr. White? Now you've heard Charles, what Charles has said. No. Has anybody got any questions for Charles? Bill?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks, Charles. Yeah, after listening to your explanation, Charles, I can't see a problem with this, to be honest. This extra information that we got, Charles, in the photograph, is that before the caravan was moved? I think it was. Just nod your head if it was. Yeah. Now, where it is there now, I can't see anything wrong with where it is there in that picture, because there's a lot going on in that picture all around about it, buildings and things like that. But now, listening to you and what's been said, the applicant has adhered to everything been asked of him. He's moved it, he's done what he's had to do, and he's addressed all the issues. So personally, I can't see any problem with it. He's going to, it's stripped out. It's not going to be used for personal use to sleep in or anything like that. So with that, Chair, I move the recommendations. I think it's okay.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McEwen. Councillor Gorm?
I can't see a reason why he needs a bigger caravan when there's a touring caravan adjacent to the stable. If it's going to be used for changing only, it's got a touring caravan there. So I can see no reason for a 30-foot caravan being put in there.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Edwards?
Yeah, I was coming in as well, the same with Councillor Gorn as well. I do question the size of the static caravan. I know it's been stripped out and it's not intentional for residential purposes, but I do question if another building on the site can be used for a brew room, if it's just to make hot drinks and just for changing. And my concern is going forward, it might be stripped out at the moment, but we need to ensure that it's not used for residential purposes in the future.
Okay, thank you. Charles, do you answer them, please?
Thank you, Chair. On page 44, page 44 of the committee papers, condition 6 would prevent the caravan being used for occupation. So the caravan is not proposed to be occupied, but that condition would be enforceable in the future. So I think the occupation issue is dealt with by that condition. I'm not aware, Chair, of there being 2 caravans on the site. I'm only aware of the application for the static caravan. I'm not aware of any other units. Is that an adequate reply, Chair?
Is that okay, the ones that answered the questions? There is a condition on there and that will be enforceable.
Can I come? On page 7 of 51, it says a touring caravan is visible. 3 horses are present in the field. So it has another caravan there. That's the one I'm referring to. why can he not use that for a change in route?
Charles, do you answer that?
Well, as I say, the application is for the static caravan. You've got to make a view as to whether you feel that is an intrusive structure or not. I think in many situations it would have been considered intrusive, but in this case, because it's seen next to all these allotment buildings, in a way, the damage is done, I suppose, is what I'm saying, that it's going to be seen relative to other buildings. And you would normally only refuse an application if you considered it was causing harm in some way. So I think that is if you like, the thought process to apply. Is this development causing harm? And if committee feels that it is causing harm, then that would be grounds for refusal, that it's intruding in the landscape, for example, or that it's, if it had been an isolated structure. But so that is the approach I would take, identify the harm. And if you agree with the recommendation, which is that there really isn't any harm here, then permission should be granted.
Okay, thanks very much, Charles. Right, anybody else wish to speak? There's no more hands up. Right, well, it has been moved. Have I got a seconder, please, for the recommendation of granting of planning permission?
I'll second it, Anne.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Husband. Right, we'll go to a vote then, please, Sharon.
Yeah, sure. The recommendation is for approval. Been moved by Councillor McEwen and seconded by Councillor Husband. So can you please state for, against or abstain? Councillor M.A. Thompson.
For.
Councillor C. Thompson.
For.
Councillor Aswad.
For.
Councillor Burley.
For.
Councillor D. Edwards.
For.
Councillor Gorn.
For.
Councillor Husband.
For.
Councillor McEwen.
For.
Councillor McLeavy.
For.
Councillor Mooney.
For.
Councillor Knott.
For.
And Councillor Preston.
For.
That's unanimous, Chair. You're on mute, sorry, Anne.
There was a load of noise outside, so I muted myself. That's carried unanimously with the recommendation and the conditions. Thank you for attending, Mr. and Mrs. White. We'll take you off the meeting now because we have other business to get on with. Okay, thank you for attending. Right, we'll go on to the. Oh, let me change my glasses so I can see. Being blind is really, it's quite difficult sometimes when you've got so many appliances. Right, we'll go on to the next one, which is on page 21 of the pack, which is change of use of part agricultural building to cutting, storage and distributing of meat, including direct sales to the public. Okay, who's doing this one? Charles?
You're stuck with me again, Chair.
Never say that, Charles. I'd never say that.
Well, the members will be probably familiar with the farm. It's the farm that's located just off the Aston roundabout on the Dalton bypass, and it's a farm which is a beef farm. And the livestock is sold off-site. Now, what the application is for is to allow direct meat sales to the public. And supporting that would be a cutting room and a storage room. There aren't actually any objections to this application. But the reason it's reported is that those uses, the storage and cutting, are classed as an industrial use. and the council's local plan policies to direct industrial uses either to industrial estates or urban areas. So actually the proposal is contrary to the local plan in that sense. But under the planning legislation, one has to take account of other considerations. And in this case, the other considerations include the fact that essentially it's supporting a farm shop, so it really has to be based at this site. And it's also a relatively small scale venture at 72 square metres. So taking account of the use and the scale, it seems reasonable for the use to operate from the farm. And on that basis, the recommendation is for approval.
Thanks, Charles. Right, has any members of the committee got any questions on this one?
No hands, Chair.
Right, thank you. Have I got a mover and a seconder, please?
I'll move it, Chair.
Right,
I'll move the
okay,
recommendations.
I'll second it if nobody else has.
right, okay, that's been moved and seconded for the recommendation for granting of planning approval. So, Sharon, can you take a vote, please?
Yeah, sure. So it's moved by Councillor McEwen, seconded by Councillor Husband. Councillor M.A. Thompson.
For.
Councillor C. Thompson.
For.
Councillor Aswad.
For.
Councillor Burley.
For.
Councillor Edwards.
For.
Councillor Gorn.
For.
Councillor Husband.
For.
Councillor McEwen.
For.
Councillor McLeavy.
For.
Councillor Mooney.
For.
Councillor Knott.
For.
And Councillor Preston.
For.
That's carried unanimous, Chair.
Right, thank you very much. Committee, we'll move on to the next one, which is variation of condition number 3 of planning permission, whatever, to allow use as a riding school at Park Road, Barrow-in-Furness. Who's doing this one, Charles? Are you on again?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mentioned when we were talking about Redley Lane that horse and pony keeping was very popular in the local area, and this application, if you like, continues that theme. It relates to an existing horse keeping establishment, but it was approved on an entirely domestic basis, so it was only the applicants' horses and ponies that could be looked after and exercised. And that is a standard condition that we put on all applications for paddocks and the like. Now, what the application is for is to allow riding lessons to be taught from the site. And it actually has all the facilities to allow lessons to be taught. It has, for example, an all-weather exercise area for the horses, and it also has a small car park or parking area. We've consulted the County Council as Highway Authority. They're quite happy in terms of the access into the site. No other alteration, well, no alterations are involved. It's also a fairly low-key riding school, in the sense it would be limited to individuals or family groups. So it is a relatively small-scale venture. And taking all that into account, Chair, the recommendation is for approval.
Okay, thanks very much, Charles. Any members of the committee got any questions? No, well, can I have the recommendation is for granting?
Move the
Councillor McEwen's
recommendation,
got his
Chair.
hand
Oh,
up, Chair.
sorry, I didn't say, you must have just put it up when I turned away, Bill.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that the objector was objecting to the lights, but that's not a problem, is it, Charles?
No.
Because they are consistent lights, so there's no problem there.
Chair, yes, there's no changes proposed. There's no physical changes proposed.
That's brilliant. I'll move the recommendation, Chair, then.
Have I got a seconder, please?
Oh. I'll second it.
Thank you. Right, do you want to do a roll call, Sharon, please?
Yeah, recommendation moved by councillor McEwen and seconded by councillor Husband. Councillor M.A. Thompson.
For.
Councillor C. Thompson.
For.
Councillor Aswad.
For.
Councillor Burley.
For.
Councillor D. Edwards.
For.
Councillor Gorm.
For.
Councillor Husband.
For.
Councillor McEwen.
For.
Councillor McLeavy.
For.
Councillor Mooney. Councillor Mooney.
For.
Councillor Knott.
For.
Councillor Preston.
For.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you, and that concludes our business today. So please, Rachel, can you turn the...